and a very strange person. Um, his brother Charles wrote a novel in which he portrayed Crash. I mean, almost as if he were a muse in a sense. Uh, but yeah, he sang. I wish I could find some of his recordings, but uh,
Not so far.
not so far. And I haven't looked hard. Now you talk about rare records. If I may, I'd like to show you a couple of rare records. Uh, this one here. This one here, I asked uh, this one here. That's Bob and Justine.
Oh, from Bandstand.
You got it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Bob Clayton was from Wilmington. He went to P.S. DuPont High School. Every afternoon, he would hop in his car and run up to Philadelphia so he could dance with Justine Corelli. And they became an item on American Bandstand. They were like in the fan magazines and everything. And they decided to do a record, this record right here, drive-in movie. And it got them both kicked off of Bandstand.
Because now they were professionals.
They were
Not-
professionals.
Yeah.
You couldn't capitalize off of Bandstand. I asked Val Shively in Philadelphia if he would sell me a copy, and he said, "Well, what label's it on?" So I started throwing out names of labels in Philadelphia, some obscure ones like Guyton, and he said, "No, if you can't tell me what label it is, I'm not going to sell it to you." So we left it at that.
That's the
Okay.
way. Well, that's the way he was.
He
you know.
was, yeah.
Basically, he would have a sign in his place that said, "If you don't know what you want, don't come in."
Right. And I happened to go in there on a Black Friday in 1984 with Brian Lee,
Mm-hmm.
and because Val would always cut him up. I did buy one record from him uh, because it was just after Teddy Henry had died in 1984, and I wanted a copy of. See if I still have it, I think. And he sold it to me for $35, just because I had told him that Teddy Henry had just died, and it was.
Is it hiding?
No, I have it here. It's this record here. He sold it to me. This is Teddy Henry's Teddy and the Continentals mint copy of Do You.
Which reminds me that they thought that somebody else had. I remember when we interviewed them, they thought that somebody else had actually taken that song from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that's not the case.
Okay.
That's not the case because here's the original.
I'll be darned.
Here's the original. The original was a thing called "Congratulations" by Al Banks and the Turbans from
Okay.
1957.
Whoa.
So really, they got it from they got their song from the Turbans, just like they got the clock from Lee Andrews and the Hearts.
Right.
Tick Tick Tock, yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
which I have the original of Tick Tick Tock here.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't get away from me. Save that for later. Tick Tick Tock, Tick Tick Tock, Tick Tick Tock. Here it is. This is the original
Somebody
Tick
make
Tick
it
Tock.
stop. It's upside down. There we
Yeah.
go.
There it is. Tick Tick Tock.
And these are both on Richie with different labels.
Yeah, different color labels. The story of the drive-in movie, I finally did find this on an auction. And I would have never guessed it was on France Hill. And, that's why Val Shively wouldn't sell it to me. Now, my most rare record, or the one I paid the most for, was this one after the Continentals broke up. And this is just Teddy Continental. Find Someone. And the flip side, which is just as good. This was done with a band from Wilmington, the Joe Harris
Yeah, Joe
band.
Harris's band, Joey and the Challengers.
Joey and the Challengers. which included Jose Prado.
Yep.
I always want to mention Jose Prado because he got, well, I won't go into that, but he was a real good guy.
'Cause he deserves the credit.
And he deserves the credit. And he played trumpet on that.
Joe Harrison Company is definitely someone who we need to look at for
Yes.
Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Now, here's, as long as we're showing and telling, here's another story. This is an early Universal record. I'll pull it out of the sleeve here. By Lonnie and the Crisis.
Oh man,
Okay,
you've got a copy.
I got a copy. It's a nice copy too. And
So it's Santa Town.
and Santa Town is on the flip side. Santa Town was played a lot on Whams back when it came out. Lonnie had to have been about 11 years old when he did this one.
I remember hearing that on, well, every Christmas Charlie Horner on WXPN
Okay,
would play it.
there it is right there, Santa Town.
Yes, every Christmas he plays Santa Town USA.
Okay.
But I had no idea that he was that there was a connection to Wilmington.
Yeah,
Right.
Lonnie White, I remember him in the late 60s because he hung around campus a lot. It was a little bit scary. And he also did a recording with the Matadors.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then he sort of was run out of town. Okay, and he changed his name to Snooky Tate.
Yep, there it is.
There's Snooky Tate. That's Lonnie White. And some nice things on that one. Yeah, there's another picture of me on the back. And he lost a lot of weight. He was sort of a chubby guy. But
When was this from?
huh?
When was this from?
This is, well, had to be in the 80s, 1982. 1982.
Say it looks relatively new, so.
Yeah,
And
closer to your era.
Yeah.
as long as I'm showing stuff,
Yeah,
Uh,
go.
one of the premier local bands in Wilmington, on the Ritchie label as well, was the Enfields.
Yes,
Okay,
North Wilmington Gang.
I don't have any Enfield records. I have a CD that had come out by the Enfields. I didn't bring it, but the main guy behind the Enfields was let's see if I can make sure I get his name right. Bill Munda, Ted Munda.
Ted Munda.
Ted Munda.
Yep.
And after the Enfields broke up, he formed another band called Hotspur in New York on Columbia. This went nowhere,
I'll be darned.
but it's Ted Munda. He wrote a lot of the songs on here. I'm not sure which one of these is Ted Munda. I think it's him, either him or him. But that's another Wilmington musician who made good. Okay. And that came out in 1974.
Is Ritchie a Wilmington label?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they still exist?
No.
No.
No. It was the Ritchie. Vinnie Rago. Vinnie Rago was the producer behind it.
His son was Richie.
His son was Ritchie. He originally, before he had Ritchie Records, he had Universal. And Universal morphed into Ritchie Records, which was a bit more successful than Universal. Here's another one on Universal. This is Ronnie Worth, whose full name was Hollingsworth. If you know about Hollingsworth Fuel and Oil, okay.
That's the family.
He was the family, yeah. Now, a lot of the rock and roll that was made ended up on Kendall, which is in Stanton. It's a-
Yep. Still there.
studio,
a music
yeah.
recording studio. Oh, you know.
It used to be.
Kendall.
It used to be at 5th and Market,
Mhm.
above Knowles Record Store, right?
I thought it was on 5th and Shipley.
5th and Shipley. I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that's what I remember. Was 5th
That's
and
where it
Shipley.
was, at Knowles. And then it moved out to Stanton. And a couple of years ago, this is hard to get. This is not even my album. This is belongs to Scott Burney. He lent it to me. But there's a lot of tunes on here from the Ritchie label, including the Contemporaries. There's Larry Davis doing Tick Tick Tock,
Oh, okay.
All right.
but
Larry Davis of the.
of the Continentals.
Continentals.
Yeah, he later did a garage band version, and we played it for him, and he never heard it. He never heard it. He recorded. He didn't even see the band. He was in a booth, right? And but there's a lot of great stuff on here. There's the Contemporaries, the Fabulous Pharaohs
Oh yeah.
have a tune on here. Called
Red
Hold Me Tight.
Dawson
Yeah.
and with an A. My brain's gone today.
Aubrey Fisher.
Aubrey Fisher. And others.
And others. And he even has a couple Chavis labels. Chavis was another label in Wilmington that was founded by James J. Chavis, Gerald Chavis's father.
Right.
And
They
he-
called him Pop.
Pappy.
Pop Chavis.
Pappy Chavis.
Pappy.
That one's a new one on
Pappy
me.
Chavis,
Pappy
that's what they call him. Yeah,
I
he
imagine it was tough for being so close to Philadelphia to have a lot of labels that were successful, for lack of a better term. Do you think, or no, or?
Well, they were successful here.
those labels did make they made local noise.
Yeah.
You know, but I can't say they really, not too many of them went,
National.
national. Like the Continents record, Boys Who Don't Understand, I was able to find a Wham's, because I've been really looking those things up, those Wham's Top 30. And I got the one where they hit their peak position. In 1963, the song hit number 4.
This one right here.
Yeah, it hit number 4
On Ritchie.
on our Wham's on the Wham's list of hits. And of course, Teddy and the Continentals used to be on the Wham's list of hits too.
Yeah.
Of course, they did have one. They did have one that didn't quite make the Billboard 100. In fact, it just kind of dipped right under it.
The Bubbling Under chart.
Right. I think it hit number 101.
101, yes, in 1961, yeah.
Yeah, that's as close as they ever got to a national hit. When you speak about Philadelphia, where some groups, some people did actually go to Philadelphia to record, like this one here, which is the first record I was ever on. A group called Mellow Souls. This was back in 1967, and we did this up at Virtue. That's something I'll never forget because it was my first time in the studio.
I'm flabbergasted. You haven't talked about this. I'm so tickled to know that.
Yeah, well,
And I think we had that 45 on our website
You did.
at
did.
one point, but I didn't know you were part of it.
Yes, I played baritone sax on it. In fact, most of the guys in the group were high schoolers.
Wow.
We were high schools. I was in the 10th grade when we did that.
And I don't know when this is going to be produced, and I need to tell you this, that on the next Heart and Soul Delaware Rock and Roll in October that we play, because it runs two different times on WVUD, and the one with this record will be on the next Heart and Soul Delaware Rock and Roll in October.
Now, I'm unclear. Is it every Thursday morning? Or
Every Thursday morning at 8:30 is the series, the Heart and Soul Delaware
Right.
Rock and Roll, and it's a 16-part series,
Right.
half-hour programs. It'll probably be recycled about 3 times, so it'll be playing for a year. But I also play it every month on my program, Bop Time, and I've been doing that every month, and like, you might want to edit this out because it's coming up this very Thursday.
Tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, yes, tomorrow will be rock and roll made in Delaware in the late 50s, which includes the only hit record made by a Delawarean in the late 50s, a thing called The Shag Is Totally Cool by Billy Graves. And that'll be played along with that record I showed you by Bob and Justine, which also came out in the late 50s, including a few others. Andy and the Gigolos.
Oh, yeah.
There'll be two of those. One by Fat Pat Patterson.
Okay.
One by that Universal one that I showed you by Ronnie Worth. And that'll be tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow morning. Oh, wow.
So.
Okay, and Lou Kaz, we'll find on the next.
Yeah, he'll
week.
actually be not next week, but the week. Yeah, no, it'll be the following week. Yeah, he'll be on.
Yeah.
Here's a Lucas 45, by the way. On Luland, he was on several labels.
Yeah, several.
None
Yeah.
of them local, actually.
No.
He went out to
VJ.
California. He
Yeah,
was on VJ. He was about the closest to local.
Yeah, VJ. Of course, VJ was out of Chicago.
Yeah, but never
But,
recorded.
a couple of his records came out on the West Coast. Well,
Yeah.
on Bob Gedden's label, the
Art Tone?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Art Tone label, which was Bob Gedden's and Jimmy McCracklin. You know, yeah, he had that, and there's even one. I've even seen one on the Clock label.
Yes, that's right.
Wow.
I have a question. It's a little off topic, but I usually ask it when I do my show. You brought up American Bandstand and people driving up, going to it, and things like that. And,
Right.
a lot of it left because television was moving to the West Coast. Johnny Carson took the Tonight Show out west, and then the industry
Bandstand went
went
out
that
west.
way.
Yeah, Bandstand.
How does that affect, like, you guys finding stuff that, like, is locally produced, because nowadays you don't really hear where people are from.
Right.
You just hear who they are and that, and then you gotta hope that the local people bring it up. Off music topic, George Clooney, when he did Good Night and Good Luck, his father worked at WDEL.
Yeah, he was a
in the
newscaster.
50s. He was in the early 50s. So but we would never have known that if locally we didn't dig that up. Do you think that makes it harder for this type of organization to be successful with this at Delaware, with that, or, because you guys do a lot of research. I mean, you got tons of records, you have all this knowledge and that stuff. How does that lead the future for, organizations like this?
I don't know. I can only say that as far as Nick Clooney is concerned, I've seen ads in the newspaper because I do my radio program. The research that I do in my radio program is I go to the old microfilm and find things there that are tidbits, not necessarily news, but trivia. And I've found advertisements in the newspaper for WDEL, and there's a picture of Nick Clooney, our newscaster. I look for those kinds of national connections, and this is off topic too, but I just happen to bring it because not only do I research the music, and Larry's more diligent than I am. I mean, he knows a lot more than I do. I just, happen to have known Teddy Henry in high school and that sort of thing. I'm more into Delaware literature and finding those kinds of connections with literature. In fact, you said bring it along with me.
Absolutely. This is not off topic because this interview was about the two of you.
Yeah. But I have done a lot of work about Delaware literature. In fact, I just showed you a picture of Green Peyton, who was
Crash
Peyton.
Yeah.
Who did I say?
Green Peyton.
Green Peyton.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he wrote some novels under the name Green Peyton. He wrote science fiction under his real name. He wrote 2 novels under Green Peyton, and his brother Charles Wertenbaker was a very provocative writer, which probably keeps him from being more well known now. But he grew up in Wilmington, and most of my research has to do with literature, Delaware literature. I mean, we would never realize that we have people who wrote in Delaware who have interacted with people like Edgar Allan Poe and Mark Twain, F. Scott Fitzgerald. That's probably a little more known because of the restaurant in Wilmington.
And well, Edgar Allan Poe lived in outside Philadelphia for, I think, the last years of his life.
He
Lived there or something.
He lived in Philadelphia. I've been in the house that he lived in. He wrote The Raven there. And in the last years of his life, he lived in New York.
Oh,
Okay, he had bought a magazine there called the Broadway Journal. Of course, he's from Virginia, but the one state or city that's mostly connected with him is Baltimore. Though, and back then, you know, traveling between Philadelphia and Baltimore is just like today. You come through Delaware. But he did lecture here. There's some scant evidence that he lectured regularly in Newark for what was then the Delaware Academy. He gave that infamous lecture in, that's Poe right there.
That's what I was thinking too.
It's funny. I have
visit.
a lot of off stories about some spooky stuff about Poe. But he did give a lecture in Newark, for which there's that legend of him cursing Newark and all that stuff. And he did also do some lectures in Wilmington, you know, as part of his tour. I mean, you know, he had to tour like any artist today. You have to tour. So he has a Delaware connection. He and Delaware's first literary figure of any repute. The two of them interacted. I'm talking about John Laughlin. He also interacted with Robert Montgomery Bird to a lesser extent. One of Bird's novels is still in print. It's a great novel called Shepherd Lee. So Poe has, you know, if we can claim in Delaware, you know, a famous author, it would be Edgar Allan Poe.
Neat.
But I wrote a whole book about it. I mean, it's 400 pages of just stuff about Delaware literature, and it's just amazing, you know, the part that Delaware artists played, you know, with well-known. Hart Crane was another one who interacted with James Whaler, for example.
There we go.
Delaware's most successful 20th century poet, who you never heard of.
Right. And down in the Newport area, I believe there's a street that you would recognize. Ellesmere area.
Oh,
Stephen Leach.
right, Leach Avenue, yeah.
Leach
Yeah.
Avenue. Yeah,
That was,
his family.
That was named after my great-grandfather,
Mm-hmm.
who played a small part in a very unfortunate incident in Delaware. This is really off topic, but it's a sad story.
Gotcha. You have an incredible stack of the 78s and some in sleeves. What else do you have there of interest?
Oh, gee, well.
Until I started going through the 78s that we were given to do some fundraising, I didn't know they made 78s in the brown color. There's a
Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
Yeah,
on the
go.
topic? Why are there 78s? Why are there 45s? Why wasn't there just one? I mean, what was the... Obviously, one preceded the other. I'm assuming, you know... I mean, my generation, it was cassette tapes and CDs.
Right.
I get that. What's the difference between a 78 and a 45? And
Well, it's an advance in technology
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
time.
yeah. That's the thing. Because see, for years, all you had was 78s. You know, and then in the late 40s, Columbia Records was working on a secret project, and RCA Victor was working on a secret project. You know, that with this advanced technology for different for different label speeds. Well, Columbia got theirs out first. Columbia was the first to bring out the long play album in 1948. Then RCA Victor comes along with the little, what they call donut discs, the 45s. Well, for one thing, 45s were they were a lot easier to carry around because these things are quite heavy, you know. And then too, another thing I think that helped 45s is the fact that as rhythm and blues sort of morphed into rock and roll, 45s became the records of choice for young people, because it was easy, it was easy to carry around a bunch of 45s. Yeah, they were easy to carry around. You can have a bunch of them to dance to, because actually the LPs more or less were good for classical music and jazz, because in the old days, classical music, and I have a bunch of these, like you talked about the albums and books. Well, in the old days, that's the way classical music was. They were like in books, and it would take, say, to do, say, Beethoven's Fifth Symphony would require 4 12-inch 78s to do, two-sided 78s. Whereas when the LP came out, it's all on one. You can play it from beginning to end. You don't have to get up and flip the records over, and do that sort of thing. But that's basically just technology.
And aren't they made from something different than
Shellac.
Yeah, than the
These are made of
33s?
Vinyl.
Yeah.
And then of course as the 45s got more and more popular, they began slowly phasing the 78s out. In fact, this one, and this was a hit. This was a big time hit, Fannie Mae by Buster Brown, but it's one of the last 78s that was ever made.
And that's made of plastic, right?
Yeah. This is from late 1959 going into 1960.
Plastic, vinyl.
Vinyl, same.
So it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because some 78s were pressed in real, like paper thin vinyl, and Columbia Records had a habit of doing something. Columbia Records used to they used to put a thin piece of paper inside their records, what they called lamination, like a record like this. You can you could really, like this one, Duke Ellington's Caravan, and this is a 1941 record.
So where would you be able to see that paper, and
Just
what's
under
the purpose?
just under the label. Just under the label. It's a thin, what they would do is sort of just put the, cut the shellac over top of it.
Okay.
And it made Columbia Records a little harder to break.
Ah. Okay.
They were a little harder to break than some of these others. Yeah, this actually is a reissue. It's a reissue because it was originally done in 1937. I have a copy of the 1937 record. In fact, I pulled up something. I brought something here. I just pulled it up this morning. This one, a little record called "Take Me Back" by Linda Hayes, who was the sister of Tony Williams of the Platters. I brought this one along because this is the first one I remember hearing on Even Stevens Pop Time.
Okay.
The very first one. The WXPN show, the vocal group show, had gone off the air, and I was kind of lost. I didn't know, I needed some, I was just surfing the radio, just to see if I could find something. And then I heard this record and I said, wait a minute, I've heard that voice. I know this song. I didn't have the 78 at that time, but as it turns out, he was working through 1953 at that time, and so that started me as a listener.
Wow. Caught your attention.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I took it off topic. That was a question.
Oh.
That was
No, that's an apt question. makes a whole lot of sense. What the heck's the difference? I'm working with some 78s right now, and I notice they have at there are some records that are hard. It's hard to distinguish between the 33 and the thirds and the 78s. And when Steve told me they were made from shellac, I discovered most of them have a tiny little edge, on the side from the having poured the mold.
Right.
Just a little crackle almost on the edge. So if I took a couple of them that I had questions about and turned them around, then sure enough, there was the edge, the lace. So, yeah, I was able to identify it. No, it's really interesting.
But the one thing, there is one interesting thing about 78s, especially if they're in good condition, is that they have a clarity that's, just completely just blows the mind. I mean, we talk about CDs and how clear they are, although I think when you electronically try to reproduce some of them, especially from these old mono recordings, you do lose a little bit of clarity. But I have recordings in my 78s in my collection that I could play for you, and if you didn't know they were 78s, you'd swear they were CDs. That's just how good they sound. Of course, you have to have a certain stylus to play them. You can't play 78s with a 45 or 33 needle.
It gets really noisy.
Terribly noisy.
Yeah, I discovered that. There's a lot of, it sounds like low-grade static, but it's a different sound. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Of course, the styluses they have now are much better, much better than the kinds of things that they had when I was growing up. When you had the steel.
Got the little envelopes with the steel
Yep.
needles.
Oh yeah.
I remember those too.
Oh yeah. I used to get them from my grandmother's record player. They were like 15 cents a pack, and they came with the ones we used to get. They would come in like three different colors: soft, medium, and loud. But I kept my grandmother's record player good, stocked with needles, because you couldn't play one for a long period of time. Because when the needle started wearing out, they would make your 78 sound like roadkill.
I actually ran into a guy in Cincinnati who played his 78s with a wooden needle.
Oh my goodness.
I can't comment any more than that, but it sounded fine. But yeah, there is a difference between the technologies. I just got my turntable back into commission again, and so I've been revisiting a lot of my LPs, and it's amazing how warm the sound is. That's the way I would qualify. CDs, yeah, the sound is great, but there's a certain coldness in it. But with vinyl, with the right stylus, that's the only way I can describe it. There's a warmth there. I don't know. What would you think?
Yeah, I'd say that. And and of course the technology. In the middle 50s, they had what you call high fidelity, hi-fi, and then stereo came along. Of course that got even later on. They had quadraphonic sound.
Yes, they did. Well, if you want to hear more from Chuck Old, because we enjoyed his questions and his filming, but I kind of jumped in there a lot today. You want to check him out on the Delaware Valley Original Music Showcase. Yeah, it's on my Facebook page. It is its own Facebook page, and he's presenting some fabulous music that you probably won't hear any other place because it's not on records as yet. Show you how rich the Delaware area is in the tri-state area for the original music showcase, but show you how rich the Delaware area is with music and talent. We are the Delaware Rock and Roll Society, and we have encountered so many phenomenal musicians. There's so much work to be done, and there's only so much space and time in a 2.5 hour show. So keep your eyes open for our inductions. Keep your eyes open for on Facebook. Predominantly any of these interviews. If you go to our website, you have to put in www.Delaware Rock and Roll Society to pull it up. You'll see lots and lots of interviews. Come on over there, sample everything that we've already done. Get out and support your musicians in this pandemic year. Some people playing outdoors. Wear your mask and enjoy some of the music. Talk about an encyclopedia. Larry Williams is an absolute treasure. Stephen Leach is also a treasure. He's got books and music and whatever. Any questions that you ever want to know, that you ever have about music, can be answered by Larry Williams. We're so grateful to have had you guys here for an interview. Do you have anything else that you thought, the people should know about?
The only thing I can add is to echo what you had said. There's a lot of rich culture in Delaware that has either been forgotten or not paid attention to. And I know for myself, and I know for Larry, it's been a great experience to rediscover all this and to put it out there, because as Charles Wharton Baker, one of Delaware's writers, once said, that the culture here nurtures mediocrity. He said this back in the 30s, and it's always been true. Delaware has always had a reputation of being mediocre.
Yeah.
But that's not true. A lot of really rich art has been done in Delaware. I mean, we know about the visual art. I mean, everyone from the Piles and the Wyeths to a certain extent to Loper, we kind of know that. And I do, want to give out some kudos to the Delaware Art Museum for keeping that legacy alive. But music and literature has kind of been driven underground. I won't say driven, because no one's been driving it. It's just that it's been forgotten and not remembered
celebrated.
and celebrated.
Yeah, that's the thing. It hasn't really been celebrated. I mean, like when you talk about music, you talk about jazz. Well, everybody knows Clifford Brown.
Right.
But not everybody knows Lem Winchester.
Yes.
Lem Winchester, the Winchester family, I could kind of consider the first family of jazz around town, because, well, I didn't know Lem, but I worked with Lem. I worked with Millie Cannon, who's his sister. I worked with George Wilkerson, and they're all part of the same family. There's
The aristocracy.
I mean, then you had Gerald Price, another great piano player. I mean, there have been people here. It's just a few that managed to get out and really make a name for themselves, like Clifford Brown did, like Wilby Fletcher did, like Matthew Shipp has done. A few that managed to break out. Because when you talk about mediocrity, most of the time, Wilmington seems to have always had to take a backseat to Philadelphia. The thing, when you talk about jazz, the talk was that Wilmington musicians were never up to the caliber of the type of things that you heard in Philadelphia. Well, I beg to differ, because I've worked with some of the best ones here. I've worked with Vernon James and people like that, so I know that there are some good ones around here. But we never get that kind of credit. That's the thing, we just never, like he said, it's kind of like it has been forgotten or driven underground, because there hasn't been enough attention paid to it.
Got ya. So we need to work on that. Chuck Old is our newest board member for the Delaware Rock and Roll Society. We are thrilled to have him. Thank you so much for today, and thank the two of you. What a delight. What a delight.